Hello everyone and welcome to the PROMAX series of classes. On today's agenda, we would be dealing with a few basics of grammar. Some areas that we have difficulties with, whether we are looking at grammar component as a part of improving our spoken English, or we are looking at the grammar component as part of improving our writing skills, or even as part of improving our performance on any of the competitive exams that we might face. So as part of the grammar series of classes, we will start with the very basics. When we talk about the basics, we will start right with the parts of speech. Now, English language has uncountable number of variations in every component of its formation or in every component of its structure. So while we might say that some rules may be applicable to some of the situations, some rules might have exceptions. Now the problem with English language is that the exceptions are one too many, and rules, they seem to be all the more confusing simply because of the variations that might be there in a sentence structure. The alphabet that we see in terms of English, that is very simple. Formation of individual words is simple, but when these words are put together in a sentence format, they can carry different meanings depending on where the particular word is placed. So in order to counteract all these problems, a little bit of clarity in the idea of grammar is necessary. So let's take a look at the basics. Today, I will touch on the parts of speech and then go into types of nouns. So let's see what the parts of speech are. Now, why are we doing parts of speech first? Because once we know the parts of speech, then we have some names to address every component of the situation or the sentence, and then we have some kind of peg to hold on to a certain structure. So given that factor, we will start off with parts of speech. Now, there are 8 parts of speech, though some of us have this mistaken notion that there are 2 parts of speech, because in our mind, direct speech, indirect speech. So therefore, direct speech, indirect speech, that's only 2 parts of speech. But no, those are not parts of speech. Those are, like the name suggests, direct and indirect type of speeches. It does not have anything to do with the components of a sentence. It does not have anything to do with the parts of speech that we are talking about. So how many parts of speech are there in English? In English, there are 8 parts of speech. 8 parts of speech. These 8 parts of speech seemingly cover the entirety or the ocean of what we call as English language. Now, what are these parts of speech? The first one, and the very basic one, is nouns. Second, pronouns. Followed by verbs, adverbs, adjectives, prepositions, conjunctions, and last is interjection. Now, a fairly good idea about these parts of speech will give us an idea as to what could be right in a given context of a sentence, what a particular word could mean in a given context of sentence, whether we are even talking about singularity and plurality, and so on and so forth. Now, each of these are major headings. these are major headings because within these there are again subdivisions. These subdivisions are equally important, except for interjections where there are not many rules or it's very easy to identify where to place an interjection. Except for interjection, all these things you need to look at with some amount of clarity, and in-depth outlook towards this is necessary simply because we want to gain some kind of proficiency in each of these parts. So today what we will do is we will touch on the nouns and see how we can handle nouns. Now, I have not gone into the descriptions of each of these parts of speech. I have not done the definitions of these parts of speech because we would be doing them individually when we touch on that particular topic. Now, what are nouns? What exactly do we mean by nouns? Nouns are, very roughly put, names of people, places, and things. At a very rudimentary level, these can be the items that can come under noun, and this can be a very, very basic definition of what comprises nouns. Now, within nouns, there might be types of nouns. Like we can have common noun, we can have collective noun, we have proper nouns, we have material nouns, we have abstract nouns. Okay, all these are types of nouns that would define a particular name of a person or a place or a thing or an emotion or a group of things depending on what the context of the sentence is. We will examine each one of them in detail. But before we go into the types of nouns, let's look at how these nouns can be classified. Now, nouns can be classified into two types based on whether they can be singular or plural. Nouns can be classified as count nouns or countable nouns and uncountable nouns. As the name or the subheading suggests, countable nouns, something that you can count, uncountable nouns, something that you cannot count, but something that is quantified. So you can say countable nouns are nouns that deal in numbers, and uncountable nouns are nouns that deal in quantities. Now, when we talk about numbers, what are we talking about? We are talking about two types, that is singular and plural. So, is this singular and plural also possible for uncountables? We will see. As such, uncountable nouns, at a very basic level, you can't have any kind of singularity or plurality attached to it. What do I mean? For example, I can say something like, I like mangoes. Or I can say, I would like to have a mango. Now, what is the difference in both these sentences? The difference in both these sentences is the like factor is the same factor, but the difference is in the singularity and the plurality of the item that we are discussing. In this case, we are discussing the noun mangoes. In the first instance, I am talking about more than one, so therefore mangoes looks plural. In this case, I would like to have a mango. This is singular. As you can see, I cannot possibly say something like, I like a mangoes. Can I say something like that? Because a is singular and this is plural, I cannot use a. So what is the rule that we learn from this? From this we learn that whenever we have a singular noun, that has to be preceded by a or an. A or an, a, an, my, and a few other ones are ones that determine whether something is singular or plural. The presence of a or an definitely tells us that it is a singular thing that we are talking about. Without the a or an, we might be implying plurality. Alright, so we are looking at countable nouns and uncountable nouns in terms of singularity and plurality. Under the countable nouns, we have singular nouns and we have plural nouns. Singular noun is a mango, plural noun is mangoes. We say a mango, a implying the singularity. With a plural, we do not use a or an. In the same way, let us see if we can translate this into an uncountable noun. Now say, for example, if there is a sentence like, can I say something like, I like rice. Is that singular or plural? The word rice is neither singular nor plural. It is merely a noun. It implies a quantity. Suppose I say something like, I like a rice. Is that possible? Does that sound right? No, it does not sound right, because rice is one quantity. I cannot say a rice. I have to say I like rice. Here I can count mangoes. So I can say 1 mango, 2 mangoes, 3 mangoes, 4 mangoes. I cannot say 1 rice, 2 rice, 3 rice. Okay. So such kind of nouns which cannot be counted are said to be uncountable nouns. Now a difference in the countable and uncountable nouns at a very basic level again would be that uncountable nouns cannot be preceded by a or an. For example, like I just told you here, I like a rice is not possible, but it is quite possible to say something like I we're doing uncountable nouns here. So it's quite possible to say something like, I would like to have a bowl of rice. Here also you might say, we are still talking about rice. Why are we using an article here? We are using an article here because bowl as a noun is a countable noun. So therefore, we can have a bowl of rice, but we cannot have a rice, 1 rice, 2 rice and 3 rice and so on. Okay, so this is the difference that we have between countable nouns and uncountable nouns. Now, given this factor, for example, if I take a word like, there is nice beach. So then this would be, there is a nice beach. But can I say something like, there is dash sand in my shoes? Can I say something like, there is a sand in my shoes? No, it is sufficient to say there is sand in my shoes. So what does sand become? Sand becomes what we call as an uncountable noun. Whereas beach, you can have 1 beach, you can have 2 beaches, you can have 3 beaches. So therefore this is a countable noun. Alright, so when we're looking at countable nouns and uncountable nouns, not only with a and an, but also with some and any, we can use count nouns and uncountable nouns. It can be used singularly, it can be used plurally, depending on how we are placing our other nouns. Now, if you look at some of these sentences, we are looking at some and any as a component. Now, if you take this first sentence, we sang some songs. Now, songs can be one song, two songs, three songs. So, therefore, songs by itself implies plurality, in that an unquantifiable number of songs, so therefore, some songs. However, so this is counted as what we call as a countable noun, because songs are singular, plural, there can be 1, 2, 3, etc. And that whole thing can again be quantified. So therefore, some songs can be, I could have listened to 2 songs, I could have listened to 10 songs, I could have listened to 1,000,000 songs. So some songs is like that. However, look at the next part of the sentence. We listened to some music. We are using the same word some, but we are saying music because we cannot say 1 music, 2 music and 3 music. Therefore, we listen to some music. Here, it is not quantified, it cannot be numbered. It is some identifiable or unidentifiable type of thing where we are saying, we listen to some music. There is some dust on your shirt. We cannot say, there is a little dust on your shirt. There is some dust on your shirt, perhaps. So, therefore, some as in a singular or plural word to go with a count noun. However, music is an uncountable noun. Therefore, though we are saying the same thing, essentially we are saying the same thing, it is either count or noun count, so therefore meaning changes. Now if you look at the next one, let's take a few more examples to see how the change can manifest. Instead of some, let us use any and see how it changes from a count noun to a non-count noun. Did you buy any apples? Any apples. So this is a plural noun. Plural count noun. Why plural count noun? Again, on pain of repeating myself, I would say it is 1 apple, 2 apples, 3 apples and so on. So therefore, it is a plural countable noun. Did you buy any apple juice? Now, obviously we cannot say 1 juice, 2 juice. So therefore, here, though we are using the same thing, this implication here that is neither singular nor plural, but this is what we call as an uncountable noun. So some and any can be used for both count nouns and non-count nouns depending on what meaning is to be conveyed. Whether we are trying to convey a specificity, in which case you can take the first sentence, or we are trying to convey any kind of generality when we use some. Here it is still specific, but since it's in the form of a question, it is more convenient to use it in this manner. Now take a look at the other types of sentences. This is where we are looking at some and any. However, you can also look at many and much. The same difference can be manifested here. When we say many, we are looking at a number. There are many students in the class. There are many apples. There are many flowers. So therefore, each of these things can be counted, and therefore we use many. So if we take something like this, we didn't take many photographs. So photographs can be more than 1. They can be counted. So therefore we use many as a complement to the photographs. However, take a look at the next sentence where we can say that we didn't do much shopping, because it cannot be numbered, it cannot be singular or plural. Shopping is just an activity that we are looking at. So therefore, shopping can be more or less. So therefore, cannot be many. It has to be much. So much here is a quantifier, and therefore, it can be used with an uncountable noun. Now let's take at a few other words like that. Now you see, I have a few jobs to do. A few jobs to do. What is the implication when we say I have a few jobs to do? The implication is that there is more than one work to do. Maybe I have the job of ironing. Maybe I have the job of washing. Maybe I have the job of teaching. Maybe I have the job of counting. Whatever my job is, it can be counted. So therefore, I have a few jobs to do. Compare that with I have a little work to do. When I say I have a little work to do, that means there is very little work that has to be done. But there is work. However, we need to understand the difference again between the words when we use we need to understand the difference between when we use a few and few. A few implies some number. Okay. Few implies none. On a very generalized basis, we can take this. For example, I have a few dollars. That means I have some money, but it's not much. So I have a few dollars. This one decides that there is some amount of money that I have. Compare this sentence with this one. I have few dollars with me. So when we say something like this, what is the difference between both these sentences? Structurally, if you look at it, here we are using an indefinite article. Here, we do not have an article that precedes the word few. Right? So, when we do not have an article that precedes the word few, few means none. That means, I have few dollars with me would imply that I have no money with me. But when I say I have a few dollars with me, I mean that I have money, but it is not much. Right? So that is the reason, that is the difference that we have when we use an article and when we do not use an article, specifically with the word few. We are not going into the definition of what part of speech few is, merely because we do not want to confuse ourselves. It's very easy to call it an adjective, to call it an adverb, or whatever else you want to call it. But at this point of time, I do not want you to fixate on what a part of speech few is. Just understand few and how it can be used. We will tackle with the part of speech that few can belong to at a later point of time. Now, let's translate the same situation with little. The same rules as for few apply also to little. Now, for example, I have little patience with children. That means, what is the meaning? I have little patience with children. That means my patience with children is next to nothing. That means there is no patience with children. However, compare this with I have a little, I still have a little patience left. If I say something like this, then there is not much, but a little bit, still there is a little bit of patience that is there. So the difference between these two sentences is the same difference that you have between a few and few. Few means none, a few means some. In the same way, little means none, a little means some. So going by this generality, if you modify whatever sentences that you are dealing with, it would change the meaning, depending on whether you want to say that there is something or whether there is nothing. So, some and little preceded by a would make it more like a countable noun or an uncountable noun. Much definitely is always a uncountable noun. Many could be a plural uncountable noun. How, whether it can be countable or non-countable, depends again on how the sentence is formulated. So, some of the rules that we have with the articles or a and the is, say for example, if you have something like coffee, if you have something like tea or juice. Now, for example, I can say, I would like to have coffee. I would like to have 2 coffees. I would like to have some juice. So what is it that we notice here in coffee, tea or juice? What we notice is whenever we are talking about coffee, tea or juice, we do not use any articles. We use simply the words as they are. But you can always say, I would like to have 2 coffees, please. Suppose you're sitting in a restaurant and then you want to order coffee for you and for your friend. You can say, I would like to have 2 coffees, please. But definitely you cannot say something like, I would like to have 2 coffees, please. Alright, so I would like to have juice. I would like to have some juice. Not I would like to have the juice, unless you are being specific about a kind of juice.